Hello everyone and welcome to Maserati's 2021 Levante GTS, and what that means is that we have an engine that is rather well connected to Ferrari's twin-turbo V8. It's from a modular engine family called F154, and what this is a 3.8 litre cross-plane crank engine with 550 horsepower and 537 pound-feet of torque. Now, it isn't exactly from a Ferrari, because one of the calling cards to a true Ferrari engine is having an engine with a flat plane crank, and this one is 3,797 cc, where the smallest version of this engine in any of the Ferrari offerings was the California T, and that was 3,885 cc. Now, all of this really is the essential elements of what makes this Levante GTS such a thrill to drive. And we're coasting along now, and I'm about to approach a red light where I can really show the thrill of the GTS, because let's be honest, the Maserati Levante is a very flawed vehicle, but when you get to do this, all is forgiven. Now, I'm going to get back to the powertrain in a bit, but essentially the Levante is a mid-size SUV from the Stellantis group. It's on its own platform, has its own suspension system, and was really the first stage of relaunching Maserati as a premium brand. But what I've come to experience in my week living with it is that since its debut in 2016, it's still, I think, quite a fair amount away from what would be typical competition in this class. And I've tested out many vehicles that are in this segment with V8 engines to some extent of performance or comfort, whatever you would like it to be. And certainly the Maserati has its own place, but I don't really think it's that competitive of a product, especially when we're talking about the cost of admission for this vehicle. Let's start off talking about just normal driving dynamics, because the Maserati comes as standard with an air suspension system that has 5 modes of ride height and then an adaptive suspension system in this GTS, meaning you have a standard dampener mode and then a sport mode, and the standard mode is quite shocking, honestly. I haven't been in any sort of a vehicle that felt this sloppy at highway speeds. You take a corner and there's a rut in the road, let's say, in this Levante, and you continue to feel that motion as you go along. It isn't soft in the way that you would hope it to be. Instead, it just feels quite ungainly. The dampening just doesn't feel well tuned at all to this vehicle in its normal mode. But as soon as you switch over into sport, everything gets tighter, a little more level, and really isn't compromised enough where you would think that you are in a more aggressive suspension setting. But it does seem very strange to me that there is such a difference, and the normal suspension mode is just so unwieldy. Here I'm on a terrible bit of road, so I'll go into soft tuning, and now I'm going about 50 kilometers an hour, so here it feels fine. It feels like this is how a vehicle of this sort of setup should feel. But now I'm about to go into the corner with the normal mode, and there is a lot of roll into one side of the Levante. And to me, this is where I think the case of building a Ferrari SUV makes even more sense. Now, the engine itself really is quite a feat in design and capability, because even though it's twin turbocharged, at no point in the rev range does it feel like you have that turbo boost or lag or anything associated with that forced induction system. You can very clearly hear it when you gain speed, but it makes you ever wonder why we were frightened of the transition of turbocharging in these larger engine vehicles. Now, the GTS has a butterfly exhaust system, so when you're in sport mode, it's always open so you can really hear the raspiness of this engine. But when you're cruising along, that butterfly valve is closed, and it isn't until you reach 3,000 RPM that it automatically opens up, which is great if you want to experience the sound in this vehicle. And I think that's the primary reason why anybody would go out and buy a Levante over its competition. But it does seem strange in a vehicle like this that you don't have anywhere, it seems, for an option to always keep the exhaust valves open so you can always have that noise. But that just makes going into sport mode in the Levante even more worth the while, especially when you go into manual shifting mode and use this ZF8 speed, because the huge paddles behind the steering wheel feel just so lovely to use. Listen to the sound of just clicking through them. I love it. The throttle itself feels quite lightweight and therefore very sensitive to your input, so just very minor adjustments and you can really get a move on. Maserati claims that the GTS can go 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 4.2 seconds, but with the launch start, which is just as simple as mashing your foot on the brake and then the throttle, it really does feel faster than that. This is what I love doing in the Maserati, and this is what makes this vehicle have a good cause of existence, really. But a car is much more than just its engine and its powertrain. So let me have one more surge and go back into normal, because what we're unfortunately dealing with in a vehicle like this is a car that was launched in 2016 but hasn't really seen enough moves forward in the years since. They have changed things. They have updated the screen, introduced slightly more technology, and updated the exterior looks throughout time. But I get into this vehicle and nothing really seems to well represent the asking price of this product. But don't get me wrong, this is a quality vehicle. The build quality is enough to be up against BMW and Audi, but it doesn't go that notch above them. All of the leathers and the stitching feels rich, and even though the front seats don't look particularly supportive and there's nowhere near the amount of adjustments in it as what you would find in an equivalently priced BMW or Porsche, they are quite sumptuous on a long ride. But outside of the good material use, the design of the cabin doesn't have much more to bring you in. There's nothing to really stir your emotions, make you feel like you're in a soulful, independently designed product. Of course, we can say that there's a lot of shared components with something that you'd find in a Dodge Caravan, you know, all part of the older Stellantis products, like the window switches, the engine stop-start, all that kind of stuff. And yes, it doesn't feel up to snuff with the rest of the cabin. But those individual pieces within this product aren't enough to cause enough concern for me. It's that the Maserati's interior just doesn't feel like it had a real design focus, doesn't really feel like it was trying to achieve anything. To speak a little more on practicality, the second row of seating is quite tight. Sitting behind myself, don't really have much knee room or foot room, and I can't quite put my head up against the headrest. It is bashing into the roof liner. The Levante uses a frameless door frame design, so it has a coupe-esque look, and when you look at the rear visibility, it is as poor as some of the coupe-ified SUVs that I've driven recently. So maybe the Levante is meant to be a coupe SUV. I'm honestly not sure, but as you can see, these windows are dual pane glass, so the wind and road isolation is fairly good in this model. You'll get a little bit of V8 drone whenever you're on power or when you've got the cruise control engaged in this product. But as I've said a few times now, the V8 is just so rewarding to stretch out that even when it's being a little bit inconvenient, it brings a smile to your face. And I will be honest, I've tested out many products in this category, many products that have similarly sized V8 twin turbocharged engines, but none of them have made me laugh the way that this vehicle does. There's one more thing I want to finish off talking about the review of this Levante, and it's the paint color. I don't really talk about paint on this channel when it comes to my reviews because there's usually not much to say, but this vehicle has a $21,700 option for this blue paint. And at first, you laugh, you think it's ridiculous, you think rich people are stupid, but you take a closer look at this paint, and I have never seen things in a vehicle that this paint is showing off. Going down the highway, and I've really tried to capture this on camera, I hope this clip I'm putting over now is sufficient enough, but like, it is so clear and reflective that you can read other people's license plates on the bonnet as you travel along. And when you stare at it outside of the car, there's all of these flickers of light that almost look like Aurora Borealis appearing within the blue speckle. It's incredibly beautiful. So am I justifying the cost of a $21,700 paint on this Levante? Yes, I am. It's worth it. Just for the love of God, please protect it. So how is it I conclude my thoughts with this Maserati? Because even though the powertrain is enough to really tickle your inner child, it is a very silly vehicle, and I'm really not sure it's competitive going up against the likes of Porsche Cayennes or Mercedes GLEs or BMW X5s with their versions of twin turbocharged V8 engines. And even though the build quality and the way things are laid out in this vehicle is nothing to be upset about, it doesn't feel well representative of the money that you'll spend to get into this product either. So maybe you have to be a little bit of a Italian diehard. Maybe you have to love the looks of this vehicle, which I will say from up front, the Maserati Levante is one of the best looking cars on sale. So being in the Maserati Levante GTS, I am finding it hard to be objective. I am finding it is a very subjective vehicle to be in, because if for whatever reason the music that the exhaust delivers isn't appealing to you, there might not be anything here in the Levante to get you to move over to the Italian dealerships over what plenty of German offerings will provide. So you have to spend time with this vehicle to get to know it, I think. But even then, the week that I've spent with it, unless I'm doing hard accelerations, going up and down the column mounting gear shifters, I'm not sure the Levante GTS is a vehicle I'd want to spend much more time in. So I'll leave it up to you to decide. Is the Maserati Levante GTS a worthwhile vehicle to go up against the likes of GLEs, X5s and Cayennes? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again on the channel soon.